Let's turn our attention now to a critical economic issue facing South Africa and the rest of sub-Saharan Africa, the future of the African Growth and Opportunity Act, known as AGOA. This preferential trade agreement with the United States has long been a cornerstone of Africa and South Africa's export economy, credited with fostering industrial growth and crucially creating tens of thousands of jobs across various sectors. However, AGOA's recent expiry and ongoing uncertainties surrounding its renewal, fears are mounting over the potential impact on South African employment. Reports suggest that as many as 85,000 jobs to 93,000 jobs are directly reliant on AGOA, with sectors like agriculture, particularly citrus, facing significant projected losses. The question now is, what does this mean for the livelihoods of countless South Africans, and what steps are being taken to mitigate the economic fallout? Let's explore those implications and the path forward with senior agricultural economist Thabile Nkunjana. Good afternoon, and thank you for your time. So we mentioned agriculture in the context of AGOA. Perhaps let's just start with background. How important has AGOA been in the 25 years of its existence to the agriculture sector in South Africa?
Good afternoon to you, to the SABC viewers. The AGOA is a critical, tool that South African farmers and, of course, the sector in terms of value chain and exporters has for the past 5 years. This is something that we are advocating for a couple of few times whenever its expiry data is coming through, and as a result, it has been extended for a couple of times from 2006 and then 2015, which now it has expired. So as a result of all these years, there's been a lot of investment that has been put through, particularly with the citrus industry, as you've mentioned, especially for those producers and exporters from the Western Cape, but of course the processors in the Gauteng region and of course other provinces. So it has grown quite significantly in terms of expanding growth, in terms of jobs across several provinces, even though this varies across provinces and sectors, as you've mentioned.
In simpler terms, Thabile, what has the preferential trade arrangement between these countries, including South Africa and the United States, enabling market access, what has that enabled the South African citrus industry, as an example, to do? If we are being specific to the citrus, as you are mentioning, for instance, I'm going to make an example about the Western Cape, as I mentioned earlier on. With regards to that, about millions of rands have been invested, particularly for that market, the U.S. market, because, Western Cape is one of those provinces that have access to the U.S. market. And not only because, it's such a big market, but also because it has been reliable in terms of, the consumer. They have a consumer base that, there's a demand for the citrus products. And as a result, a lot of injection in terms of investment has been put through by, across the value chain, that is the exporters, the producers, and of course the packers across, the value chain of the citrus industry. And as a result, a lot of jobs have been created. And remember, Western Cape particularly, it is a leading province, for the job employment and creation in South Africa. And given the state of the country's, economy in terms of, stagnant, you will see, remember that for the past few years, the country's economy has grown around less than 1%. And so therefore, any losses in jobs because of this, particularly from the Western Cape, will have a dire, consequences for not only for the Western Cape province, but of course, the generally agricultural sector in South Africa. So it is something that, that province is looking, very much so. And of course, the Premier from the Western Cape has been pushing for this because he understands the importance of it for that province and of course, across the agricultural sector at large. The timing could not be worse, could it, Thabile, in terms of the expiry of AGOA, because it happens while at the same time as a country we are grappling with the so-called reciprocal, tariffs that have been there. And that means we revert to not just the traditional levels of tariffs allowable within the international trading system, but actually we revert to a system that actually has higher tariffs at the moment. What's the likely impact?
Yeah, so that is such an important point that you are raising, and of course the United Nations itself. So 2 days ago, I think it has actually done some work, specifically analyzing the impact of this across the continent, which includes South Africa. Now, with South Africa being the largest beneficiary within the AGOA, these implications, the implications that come with this expiring AGOA, and of course the tariffs that you are mentioning. Remember, South Africa was one of the highest, tariffs imposed within the continent of Africa. So therefore, as much as we have been benefiting largely compared to other countries, then it means now we are really facing, a steeper competition because of the, of these tariffs, and especially if we are to compare the products that we do sell, to the US, and when we bring the issues, the likes of, the citrus and wines, and comparing that to the, our competitors in terms of the tariffs themselves, you realize that the likes of Argentina, Chile, they have quite significant lower tariffs compared to South Africa. And then now, if we are to bring that into play, it really puts South African producers and exporters at the back foot, and that is something that is going to really have implications. It may not necessarily be now, but in the medium term, it is moving towards that direction, and as a result, there has been that push in terms of us trying to, the negotiations that have been happening for some time. Hopefully, if the AGOA itself is not renewed, but at least maybe we can get to see the tariffs that are imposed on South Africa to be reduced, and then that will somehow sort of level the field that you are competing against the players that I just mentioned, the likes of Peru, Chile, Argentina, Australia, and other products that we do sell to the US.
So to the untrained mind that doesn't follow these developments as closely as you do, it might be tempting to say, they're cancelling AGOA, let them. Let's find alternative markets. They're raising tariffs, let them. Why should we be begging these people? How important is it that the South African state and authorities stay the course, as difficult as the negotiations are, but stay the course, knowing what the stakes are, such that there is, a breakthrough along that negotiation? Or is it possible to adopt that glib approach that says, it's fine, it's gone, let's find new markets and move on?
That's something that a lot of folks, Tula, have been saying, that, South Africa should just need to do away with this AGOA because it has been coming. And of course, it's something that we've been saying, a number of times, including during President Obama's tenure. You realize that, you remember there was a period where South Africa was facing, almost similar situations like now, but at least then we did manage to get some through, get the breakthrough. But now, the matter of just letting go of this AGOA is something that I think a lot of people don't understand these implications, particularly if we are to look at the products that we sell to the United States. And we have so much talks that we are pushing in terms of opening up the Africa, trade between the African countries. Now, if we are to specifically look at the products that we've been selling to the US, the African countries, they do not buy as much as the US does. And then therefore, for those products, if we are to lose AGOA, then we don't really have, the access or the privilege to sell them specifically to the African continent, because the demand, it is not as much as it is in the US. And then, of course, if we are to move elsewhere, it is going to take time. Remember, we have, there's a lot that needs to be done for a country to open up an alternative market. And not only that, you need to really look in terms of the characteristic of that market. How much is the demand of the product? What is the competition in terms of the tariffs and the other non-trading measures that are being put? And then, of course, the middle class income, consumers, and a lot of other things that you need to look, including the economy of those countries.
All right, let's leave it there for this afternoon. Thank you for your insights. That's senior agricultural economist Thabile Nkunjana weighing in on those issues.